When the massive Signalgate scandal came out, the Trump administration wasted no time in pointing out who the real villain in the story was.
If she was given special treatment and treated with kid gloves because she's a Clinton, that is a serious implication.
It's all ridiculous. It's all over the top. It's all criminal.
Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct.
Nobody was texting war plans.
But the fallout from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth texting war plans over a group chat that included the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic just got worse. A recent lawsuit against Hegseth uncovered evidence that this was not an isolated incident. But commentators on the right and left couldn't help but compare this affair to a certain former Secretary of State.
You most certainly know you shouldn't be talking about it or passing it on in an email. What they did is reckless. It's complete recklessness and incompetence. Nobody is above the law, not even Hillary Clinton.
There was prosecutorial discretion there. They didn't prosecute. They didn't go after these folks in all of these other instances.
But is that an apples to apples comparison? Liz Dye has more.
Thanks, Devin. Well, despite the president's effort to distract us by sparking a global recession, the Signalgate story is still going strong. Apparently, the public will not just forget about half the president's cabinet texting war plans to each other over a commercial messaging app, particularly since that seems to have been National Security Advisor Mike Waltz's regular practice. Politico reports that Waltz's team regularly set up chats on Signal to coordinate official work on issues including Ukraine, China, Gaza, Middle East policy, Africa, and Europe, and that he regularly discussed sensitive information via the app. Although he managed not to add the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, to all of his chats.
Hey, could be worse. We could have added the editor of The Atlantic again.
You did. I am also here.
It was a little too much for one former politician. In an opinion piece in the New York Times, Hillary Clinton wrote, "It's not the hypocrisy that bothers me, it's the stupidity." But it was about to get stupider. Originally, Waltz suggested that Goldberg's number got sucked into his phone, or perhaps that the journalist had hacked into the chat.
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in, it gets sucked in.
He promised to put Elon Musk and his team of tech dudes on it toot sweet. But Hugo Lowell at The Guardian got the scoop, and it's dumber than you think. Apparently, Goldberg, who is a very good journalist, emailed a question to Waltz's deputy Brian Hughes during the 2024 campaign. Goldberg's email was forwarded to then Trump spokesperson Brian Hughes, who then copied and pasted the content of the email, including the signature block with Goldberg's phone number, into a text message that he sent to Waltz. The number was erroneously saved during a contact suggestion update by Waltz's phone and stored under the name Brian Hughes, who is now the spokesperson for the National Security Council. Waltz thought he was adding Hughes to the classified war plans group chat, but he was actually adding Goldberg. So if you think about it, this was really Siri's fault.
Oops, my bad.
Hughes later told Politico that any claim of use for classified information is 100% untrue. But then Goldberg called their bluff and published the war plans they texted him in advance. No serious person thinks that stuff would be unclassified. He's literally talking about troop movements before a drone strike in Yemen. Hughes also said that Signal is one of the approved methods of communicating with the understanding that a user must preserve the record, which is a weird thing to say when your boss just got caught changing the auto-delete settings from 4 weeks to 1 week on an app that cannot be archived. Politico reporter Dasha Burns got some amazing blind quotes, including one source who said Waltz built the entire NSC communications process on Signal, and another who said this is a bunch of folks who have never been here before and couldn't switch from campaign mode. And in some sense, you can understand that. Pete Hegseth was a weekend anchor on Fox. What does he know about federal records laws? I mean, that might suggest that some people were not appropriate candidates for the jobs that they're holding, but these guys were used to communicating via messaging app and then deleting the messages, and in the absence of a comparable instant messaging platform for secure government comms, they just kept on doing what they were used to doing. But these chatty Cathys appear to have been violating federal records laws and laws governing the storage of national defense information. You can check out our last video on Signalgate featuring national security lawyer Kel McClanahan. Since then, the government has tacitly admitted that some of these messages were not saved in accordance with the Federal Records Act. In recent litigation filed by the watchdog group American Oversight, the CIA attested that residual administrative content from the Signal chat was retrievable from that account. What exactly is residual administrative content? Because residue implies that something used to be there and now it is not. The affidavit from the State Department says that images of the signal chat in the possession of the Office of the Secretary have been captured, which kind of suggests that some images have not been captured, right? And a search of Secretary of Defense Hegseth's mobile device has been conducted, and available signal application messages that are at issue in this case have been preserved. So far, no one is getting fired over this mess. Reportedly, President Trump was pissed, not because these guys were sharing national security information on unsecured devices, but because Waltz had Goldberg's phone number in his directory. Anyway, he wasn't going to give the Dems a win by firing a guy who screwed up even badly. But that's okay, because Attorney General Pam Bondi knows who is to blame for this utter cock-up.
If you want to talk about classified information, talk about what was at Hillary Clinton's home that she was trying to bleach a bit. Talk about the classified documents in Joe Biden's garage that Hunter Biden had access to. This was not classified information.
That's right. It's Hillary Clinton. Well, maybe it was Joe Biden too, but mostly Hillary Clinton. All right, Pam, let's talk about Hillary Clinton. You want to go gato? Let's do this. Servergate versus Signalgate. Bring it. Okay, poker face, grab your low-rise jeans and let's hop in that Wayback Machine. The year was 2009. Barack Obama was in the White House and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Apple had released the iPhone in 2007, but all the serious business people used BlackBerry phones with built-in keyboards. The user interface sucked. You had to hit like 4 keys to make a question mark, but they were supposed to be harder to hack than normal phones, and most professionals used BlackBerries. So when Clinton returned to the White House, where she'd been First Lady during the 90s, she really didn't want to give up her phone, and so she didn't. So far, so familiar, right? Now, there were some pretty good reasons for Clinton not to want to move her comms to State Department official channels. For one thing, the government's technology was unbelievably clunky and out of date, and government officials routinely used personal machines to get around it. For instance, Secretary of State Colin Powell wrote in his book, It Worked for Me, to complement the official State Department computer in my office, I installed a laptop computer on a private line. My personal email account on the laptop allowed me direct access to anyone online. I started shooting emails to my principal assistants, to individual ambassadors, and increasingly to my foreign minister colleagues. Staff for Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and Madeleine Albright also relied on personal emails for their official work. And an Inspector General's report from 2016 unearthed an email to then Secretary Clinton from a State Department veteran that said, state's technology is so antiquated that no one uses a state-issued laptop, and even high officials routinely end up using their home email accounts to be able to get their work done quickly and effectively. The second reason that Clinton was extremely touchy about routing her communications through official channels was that she'd been a target of the GOP for 20 years by then, and she was extremely worried that if she used a State Department email, her personal communications would wind up mixed in and then used against her in some way by Republicans. And before you dismiss that as crazy, remember that Hillary Clinton has been accused of being a man-hating lesbian who was responsible for her husband's serial infidelity. Her 13-year-old daughter had been ruthlessly mocked for her looks by everyone from Matt Drudge to Saturday Night Live. She was accused of killing a White House aide who committed suicide in a public park and a campaign staffer who was murdered during her presidential campaign. She was blamed for the death of the Libyan ambassador in Benghazi and accused of selling America's uranium to Russia in a Baroque conspiracy theory that fell apart if you looked at it for 2 seconds. During her second presidential campaign, someone hacked her campaign manager's email and used a risotto recipe and a pizza order to concoct a bizarre tale about Clinton leading a satanic child sex abuse cult. I mean, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. None of which is a defense of Clinton's choice to route her official emails through a personal server located in her house in New York, but it is an explanation.
Now, if you're breaching a whole bunch of national security protocols, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, let my law firm, the Eagle team, help. If you've got in a car crash, suffered a data breach, especially if you got a data breach letter saying your information might have been leaked, or dealing with a workers' comp or social security issue, we can represent you or help you find the right attorney. And by the way, we don't get paid unless you do, so there's nothing up front. So just click on the link in the description or call the phone number on screen for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.
Clinton was warned multiple times that using an @clintonemail.com account represented a security risk, but she did it anyway. She reasoned that it was fine because she took care never to send classified information on her personal email, unlike, say, the Houthi PC small group, which was texting war plans willy-nilly and seems not to have been remotely concerned with the laws governing dissemination and storage of national security information. A report issued by Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz in 2018 observed that Clinton and her staff used unclassified emails when the recipients lacked access to classified systems and worded emails carefully in an attempt to avoid transmitting classified information. So they did not say stuff like, 15 hours, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. They saved that stuff for the high side. What's the high side again?
High side, by the way, is a special segregated computer or communication system, which is specifically set up to manage classified or sensitive information. Unlike Signal, high side systems must comply with the rigorous requirements and are specifically designed to protect sensitive information from cyber threats. So Waltz's message indicates that the information being discussed was sensitive enough to merit the use of these super secret, secure computer systems.
Thanks, Devin. Again. But whatever Clinton intended, at least some classified information did wind up on her personal account, although most of it was either not marked as classified when it was sent or it was retroactively classified later. After months of poring over Clinton's emails, investigators discovered 3 email chains consisting of 8 individual emails that contained at least one paragraph marked C, indicating the presence of information classified at the confidential level. But Clinton testified that she either did not see those markings or thought that they were basically paragraph numbers. Horowitz noted that none of the emails contained clear classification markings, and only 3 email chains contained any classification markings of any kind, with 1 or 2 paragraphs that were marked C for confidential but contained none of the other required markings, such as classification headers. He concluded that there was no evidence that Clinton set up her servers or private email account with the intent of communicating or retaining classified information. It's worth noting that Republicans have argued for years that Clinton violated a couple of provisions of 18 U.S.C. Section 793F, better known as the Espionage Act. First, they say that she violated Clause 1's ban on removing national security information from its proper place of custody. Essentially, they're saying that she was grossly negligent to set up a server that wound up storing national security emails, whether she intended to put them there or not. Alternatively, they argued that the server must have been hacked, something which has never been established, and thus she violated Clause 2 by allowing national security information to fall into the hands of someone not entitled to have it. Some critics have even suggested that she intentionally deleted government emails to cover her tracks. Again, never been any proof of this. And in fact, the reason that they were able to go over all these emails with a fine-tooth comb and ask her about them years later was that Hillary Clinton kept those emails and handed them over when asked. We said in the last Signalgate video that Mike Waltz and the Trump administration officials on that Signal group chat might be in trouble because they set their messages to auto-delete and did not send a copy to their official accounts. That would appear to be a violation of the Federal Records Act, specifically 44 U.S.C. Section 2911. An officer or employee of an executive agency may not create or send a record using a non-official electronic messaging account unless they forward it to their official email account within 20 days. Note that this part of the statute was added in 2014 after Hillary Clinton had left office, so she could not have violated it. But the fact is that Clinton did not ensure that the government had copies of all her emails. So in October of 2014, the State Department contacted Clinton along with former Secretaries of State Albright, Rice, and Powell and asked for any government records in their possession. That put Clinton in an awkward position of her own making because she had commingled her work and her personal emails, and now she had to separate them out and turn them over to Uncle Sam. And meanwhile, Republicans were looking to torpedo her presidential hopes in 2016 by blaming her for the terrorist attack on the U.S. diplomatic compound in Benghazi, Libya in 2012.
Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today? Her numbers are dropping. Why? Because she's untrustable. But no one would have known any of that had happened had we not fought and made that happen. Good.
In December of 2014, Clinton delivered 30,000 emails from the @clintonemail.com address she'd used as Secretary of State. Note for comparison that President Trump spent a year and a half refusing to hand over government property, including classified documents stored in various locations around his Florida golf club. He ignored a subpoena and went to great lengths to hide those documents from government investigators. Something to remember when guys like, say, Mike Waltz complained that Trump got indicted and Hillary Clinton did not. Here's Waltz in 2023 whining that Clinton deleted 33,000 government emails on a private server and didn't get indicted. That's not true. Clinton handed over 30,000 emails, but said that an additional 32,000 from that account were personal messages, and so she wasn't going to turn them over. Instead, her chief of staff, Cheryl Mills, told Clinton's IT guy, Paul Gambetta, to delete them, which he did not do, or not immediately. On March 3, 2015, the House Benghazi Committee issued a preservation order instructing Clinton and her staff not to destroy any of the personal emails, at which point Gambetta realized that he'd screwed up big time. He told the FBI that he had an oh shit moment because if he just deleted the emails in December as instructed, it would have been fine. After Congress got involved, though, it was illegal. But instead of copping to it, he took it upon himself to use a program called BleachBit to destroy those messages permanently without telling anyone. Incidentally, the Justice Department prosecutors on this case seem to think that Gambetta was kind of a moron. In the Horowitz report, they refer to him as a poor schmuck on the down that had a crappy attorney. And they gave him immunity because, quote, this guy with his dumb attorney doing some half-assed obstruction did not interest us. So finally, Gambetta admitted that he'd panicked and deleted the emails after the congressional preservation order, but without telling his boss, and that's why Clinton never got charged. But that left Clinton's opponents free to accuse her of maliciously deleting the emails to cover up the fact that they contained classified information.
And they didn't just push the delete button. They had them deleted where even God can't read them. They were using something called BleachBit. You don't use BleachBit for yoga emails or for bridesmaids emails. When you're using BleachBit, it is something you really do not want the world to see.
And on the campaign trail, Trump even asked the Russian government to hack Hillary's server to find those deleted emails, which he was sure would show evidence of crime.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
After which Russia did hack Clinton's campaign chair, John Podesta, and release his emails. The emails did not show evidence of crime, but they did lead a deranged lunatic to shoot up a pizza place in Washington, D.C., terrorizing the families who were enjoying a slice on a Sunday afternoon. Hillary Clinton left the State Department in 2013, which means that we have now been talking about her emails for 12 years.
The American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. On the campaign trail, Trump constantly threatened to put Clinton in jail.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Here's Secretary Pete Whiskey Leaks Hegseth insisting that anyone who'd done what she did would go to prison.
I mean, it's all ridiculous. It's all over the top. It's all criminal. Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct.
In fact, Clinton has been the subject of at least 2 criminal investigations, as well as 3 internal government reports. In 2016, she was investigated by the FBI in an operation codenamed Mid-Year Exam. The Justice Department concluded that there was nothing to charge Clinton with because she had not deliberately stored classified info on an unsecured server. Here's FBI Director James Comey in a press conference in July of 2016 announcing his decision.
In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts. All the cases prosecuted involved some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information or vast quantities of information exposed in such a way as to support an inference of intentional misconduct, or indications of disloyalty to the United States, or efforts to obstruct justice. We do not see those things here.
But he also went out of his way to excoriate Clinton for carelessness.
There is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
Fun fact, Trump later fired Comey with the purported justification that he'd been mean to Clinton in that very press conference. The memo from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein called it a textbook example of what federal prosecutors and agents are taught not to do. But then Anthony Weiner thrust himself into the situation. See, Weiner was a former New York congressman who had been married to Clinton's longtime aide Huma Abedin. Weiner had a bad habit of sexting ladies who were not his wife, which is why he was a former congressman in 2016. But he was not a former dirtbag, and in September of 2016, he got caught sexting a 15-year-old girl from North Carolina. So the cops seized his laptop, which contained hundreds of Abedin's work emails. That restarted the Clinton email inquiry, and on October 28, less than 2 weeks before the election, Comey sent a letter to Congress informing it that he was reopening the Clinton email case. The Abedin emails were almost all duplicates from the set turned over by Clinton in 2014, and the investigation was quickly closed. But we didn't find that out until after the 2016 election. In addition to mid-year exam and the Horowitz report, there was an investigation in 2016 by the department's Inspector General, Steve Linick. Fun fact, Trump fired Linick in 2020 for daring to investigate Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. There were also 2 more internal State Department investigations. One in 2017 concluded that Clinton's use of the server constituted a violation of department regulations, and one in 2019 said that using the personal server carried an increased risk of compromise or inadvertent disclosure, but found no persuasive evidence of systemic deliberate mishandling of classified information. Again, not crimes. On top of all that, in 2018, Trump's first Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, appointed John Huber, the U.S. Attorney for Utah, to investigate the various Clinton scandals, including Emailgate. In January of 2020, 7 years after Clinton left the State Department, Huber tapped out, having found nothing to charge her with. Trump responded by calling Huber a garbage disposal unit for important documents. In reality, Clinton's emails have been investigated over and over and over. And if Trump's Justice Department could have charged her, it would have done it. There's just no there. So that's Servergate. All right, Signalgate, what you got? Let's compare these 2 national security scandals, shall we? On the one hand, Clinton tried very hard not to use unofficial channels to discuss classified or national security information. On the other hand, Trump's entire national security leadership, including Secretary of State Rubio, Vice President Vance, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, plus, of course, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, were fist-bumping each other over battle plans, almost certainly from their phones. And while some government departments allegedly allow officials to use Signal, no one on this chain has said whether they use their secured government devices or just a regular off-the-rack iPhone. Although, I guess we can be pretty confident none of them was on a BlackBerry. And unlike Hillary Clinton, that is a potential violation of the Espionage Act, as Kell explained.
Now, that being said, what liability does Waltz have gets complicated because there are 2 possible crimes in play here. 18 U.S.C. 793F talks about gross negligence, about allowing information, national defense information, to be given to somebody through gross negligence and just being really bad at your job. That is what Waltz was doing. The second crime that Waltz could have committed is 793D. And 793D is when an authorized holder of classified information or national defense information disseminates it generally to a place that was not supposed to get it. You can't talk about classified information on the phone, on the cell phone, even on an encrypted cell phone. You have to talk about it on special lines that are set up, for instance, in the embassies and in the house of the SecDef and the house of the Secretary of State and the house of the Director of the CIA.
Hillary Clinton did not delete her official emails, classified or otherwise, or if she did, no one has ever been able to prove it despite a whole lot of trying. When the government came looking for those messages, she turned over what she had. In contrast, Waltz's Houthi PC small group set their messages to auto-delete and do not appear to have archived them. Remember, they're in litigation now, and no one from that group chat is saying it is our regular practice to make sure to CC my government email. That's why they're all making squirrely noises about residue, because messages from at least one person on that group chat have already gone poof. We just don't know who yet. And according to Politico, that's how Waltz and the boys run things on the regular. Under the Federal Records Act, government officials cannot just destroy documents. They have an affirmative obligation to retain them. And these guys clearly didn't. So no, there's no comparison.
One was heavily investigated and interrogated, and the other will probably not be. That's probably the biggest difference.
And that last part is key, because no one is coming to investigate these guys. They're not going to get a special counsel the way Joe Biden did when he discovered a handful of classified documents in his garage and immediately called the FBI. They're not going to get some U.S. attorney crawling all over them for years on end. They're not going to get a House Benghazi committee. They're not even going to get inspectors general interviewing them and their staffs and writing embarrassing reports, since one of the first things Trump did in office was to fire a whole bunch of IGs. Attorney General Pam Bondi already told us she's not going to do a single thing to investigate what is apparently the routine use of a disappearing messaging app to disseminate national security information in disappearing ink. And that's the main difference here. Because for all the years of Trump and his buddies telling us that Hillary Clinton never got investigated and got away with crimes, the minute the shoe was on the other foot, it became, say it with us now, a witch hunt.
Well, I don't know about downplaying. The press upplays it. I think it's all a witch hunt, that's all. I think it's a witch hunt.
So great job, Pam. You appointed yourself referee and you declared yourself the winner.
I don't know, Liz, it sounds like you just can't handle all the winning that the Trump administration brought us. But with all these buffoons sharing top secret national defense information, the military isn't the only ones who could benefit from increased online privacy, which they could get with today's sponsor, NordVPN. Because you know that incognito mode isn't actually incognito, right? Well, with NordVPN's no logs policy, your internet service provider doesn't get to snoop on what you're searching, and neither does NordVPN. And neither will the editor of The Atlantic, unless you personally invite them to watch your screen while you're surfing. But I especially like to use Nord while I'm using unfamiliar networks, like the free Wi-Fi at cafes and airports. And Nord is more than just a VPN. It comes with a whole suite of threat protection tools. For example, if you follow some of your favorite creators on social media, you might have heard the stories of a channel getting hacked, basically a creator losing access after a successful attack or leaked password. And this happens way too often. But NordVPN's threat protection includes specific features to warn you about phishing links, as well as features like a blocker for malicious ads and dark web monitoring to alert you if your passwords have been leaked. And of course, NordVPN is a great VPN. With Nord, you can surf the web anonymously and your location always stays private. It allows me to set my location all over the world, which lets me access different versions of my favorite websites. And when I'm out of the country and try to connect to my Gmail or a bunch of other things that I'm logged into, all these accounts would usually freak out and tell me I'm being hacked. So now I just reroute my connection to the US and Gmail and everything else is happy. And not only is Nord the fastest VPN on the planet, but you can get 24/7 customer support to help you whenever you need it and a 30-day money-back guarantee for all users. So if you'd like to give NordVPN a try, click on the link that's on screen right now or down in the description. Every purchase of the 2-year plan will receive 4 bonus months on top of a huge discount. And it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So click on the link below to get a whole bunch of bonus months and a huge discount on NordVPN. And after that, click on this box over here for LegalEagle, or I'll see you in court.